Hello, world history students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for Chapter 1, Section 3, The Foundations of Civilization. So, before we get going too far, we're going to talk a little bit about the big river valley civilizations. And one of the things that you're going to have to do on your first test is to be able to tell where some of these civilizations are located. So, we're going to start off with the basics here. We have our Nile River Valley. We have the Tigris and Euphrates river valleys in this vicinity, sometimes known as the Fertile Crescent. We have the Indus River Valley, and you can see that there are several rivers that kind of feed into this. And then finally, we have our Yellow River Valley, sometimes known as the Heng-He, but I think for this class, we're going to refer to it as the Yellow because it's a little easier to remember. So if we take a look here at our notes, some of the early villages that developed into cities because they developed food surpluses that led to larger populations and job specialization and economic changes in the growth of cities. And all these little valleys are located, obviously, in the river valleys as far as civilizations are concerned. And number two, the populations of cities differed from those of villages in that most villages consisted of a few families or clans, and cities were larger and more densely populated than villages and included people who were not necessarily related to one another, as well as people who migrated from other areas. Irrigation, and number three, and trade are connected because irrigation led to food surpluses and the need for fewer farmers. Some people became weavers, potters, or even produced trade items. So if we take a look here, first cities and first civilizations, irrigation, division of labor. For the most part, the rise of the first cities and civilizations happened at this period of time. We developed government and religious institutions. We have the emergence of social classes. This is like the poor, the middle class, the wealthy. And finally, the innovation of record keeping and writing. All these things are happening within civilizations. So, the world's first civilizations were characterized by record keeping or writing, the specialization of labor, meaning that there were people who had certain types of jobs. So we had people who were farmers, people who were servants, people who were soldiers, and so forth. Government developed, religion developed, and the arts. So the first civilizations developed along fertile river valleys. And part of that was because of the stable source of water, stable source for food and such. The world's first major cities were located in these areas. So you had the city of Ur and the city of Uruk. These were located in the Tigris and Euphrates River Valley. You had Memphis, which is not necessarily located on the delta of the Nile River, but it's a little further down. Many of the famous pharaohs, not necessarily the ones of Giza and the pyramids, were from the city of Memphis. You had Mohenjo-Daro, which was located in the Indus River Valley. And you had Enyang, which was near the Heng-He, or aka the Yellow River Valley. And number six, priests were powerful figures in the early civilizations because people in early civilizations believed gods and goddesses held power over the forces of nature. Priests could interpret the will of the gods or goddesses and perform rituals to gain the gods' favor. Because of this, priests often served as government officials. And number seven, labor specialization led to the development of technologies and ideas and social and economic order based on the jobs that people perform. So certain jobs were obviously more highly valued than others and maybe a little more prestigious in that regard. And number eight, history as we know it would have been different without the development of writing, because history probably would not have existed. If prehistory is a time before the invention of writing, then history depends on writing, as far as the sharing of those ideas. People might have used other methods to keep records. They had passed stories down orally or by word of mouth from one generation to the next. But however, important information may not have been recorded without writing. And below here, we have two examples of some early writings. And one of these is a little bit more famous because of the fact that it kind of answered a lot of clues that we had for history. But the tablet that you see here with my cursor rolling around it is an example of cuneiform. Which is a type of writing that you would have found in Samaria or along the Tigris and Euphrates River Valley. And the thing that you might notice is that there's a lot of different little indentations or lines. That, for one reason or another, was a way that they could keep track of records. The other here, this tablet happens to be a little bit more notorious. This is known as the Rosetta Stone. And the Rosetta Stone actually had 3 different languages or forms of writing. And probably the most important is hieroglyphics that came out of Egypt, and then also Greek. And what actually this allowed for is many scholars of the more modern era of time probably had learned Greek as part of a university study. It was at one point in time kind of the language of scholars, if you want to call it that. But for years, we didn't know what the hieroglyphics really meant until this tablet was found. And it was found roughly 200 years ago. And it opened the door for what some of this history might have actually was spelling out. Number 9, 3 factors that cause civilizations to change over time are geography, politics, and finally movement, the movement of people. And as people moved, obviously, we're going to be spreading different ideas. And that's really going to become kind of a constant theme as we go along in world history this semester. A lack of resources could cause a civilization to change when the resources ran out. People are forced to seek alternative solutions, which in turn would likely cause an increase in different types of trades. Number 11, the wealth and success of civilizations could lead to its decline when other civilizations may want to acquire its resources, leading them to invade it. Prolonged war, for the most part, could deplete a civilization's wealth and cause it to decline, even if it was conquered or wasn't conquered. And you can see some of the different economic systems that might have come about. When we talk about the modern era, we probably talk more about the market and mixed economy. At the era that we're kind of focusing on, the pre-historic time, we're probably talking about a little more about trade economies. And number 12, the factors that change civilization are basically cultural diffusion. This is the idea that as people travel, their ideas are going to be spread around. So if you take a look at the photos here, we have a McDonald's and we have a logo for Coca-Cola. And if you take a look at this, the McDonald's that you see here is actually located in Saudi Arabia. You see a little bit of Arabic that's being used there, but the iconic golden arches obviously are something that's a little more timeless. And if you look closely, there's a little Ronald McDonald in the background. When we talk about Coca-Cola, this is one that is found in most likely Southeast Asia. We have some Buddhist monks here, but the iconic logo is something that is kind of universal. Thank you very much.